Electrocast.
There's a change happening in the way we live, the way we work, the way we spend our money and make our decisions. We are evolving to be more conscious in our actions in a way that serves the world and makes it a better place. Welcome to the Ethical Evolution. The Ethical Evolution podcast is brought to you by Ethical Change Agency. I'm Bindi, I'm the founder, and my mission is to help ethical entrepreneurs and holistic healers to find their voice through spiritual coaching and podcasting. I'm honoured to bring you the stories of those who create change through healing, kindness, innovation, purpose, and spirit. Understanding that to create collective change, we need to be the change. It all begins with us. Seth Eliot Santoro is an intuitive leadership expert, healer, reframer, and Smileologist. He is a spiritual consultant, intuitive bestseller coach, psychic medium, animal communicator, HR advisor, speaker, bereavement facilitator, and death expert. Seth is also a 3-time #1 international best-selling author of Smile from the Inside, From Grief to Grace, and Finn and the Ferocious Flu, with many more self-help and children's books on the way. Seth's vision is to inspire 1 billion humans to heal and, therefore, smile from the inside. As a fellow psychic and spirit communicator, I relish at the opportunity to connect with Seth and know this won't be the last time we get together in such meaningful conversations. Welcome, Seth, to the Ethical Evolution.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Now, you're joining us all the way from LA. For those people who don't know who you are, can you go ahead and tell us?
Sure. I'm Seth Eliot Santoro. I'm an intuitive business coach, Smileologist, 3-time international bestselling author, intuitive healer, psychic medium. I think the list goes on and on. I'm also a bereavement facilitator. I love death. And everything to do with death and grief and helping people move through grief.
Oh my gosh, there's so much to unpack there. Seriously. Now, I'm going to start with, I'm actually going to start with your psychic abilities.
Okay.
And ask you, how did you find yours?
It's a good question. Throughout my entire life, I knew things and I didn't know exactly how I knew them. I also saw a lot of things and I don't know how I was able to see them. But it was in my 20s, late 20s, I started playing this game with people where I would guess where they're from within like 5 minutes of meeting them. And I was like 95% accurate all the time, but not just like states or countries, like cities, so there was something to that. But it wasn't until I broke a pattern of dating people who wouldn't understand or couldn't understand my love language or just couldn't love me the way I wanted or needed to be loved. So it was like literally 2 or 3 boyfriends in a row. And I literally rolled over in both relationships at the end and said, I deserve better. And it was like when I broke that pattern, the next day, everything opened up. I mean, the whole world opened up and I could no longer deny that I was receiving information about anyone I was with. So whether it be, and it all started with mediumship for me, which is just talking to deceased loved ones. So I would be out to dinner and I would just start feeling all sorts of things and seeing things for someone sitting across that I might not know as well. So it took me about 9 to 10 months to kind of come out again in my life, right? And I didn't really have any mentors or didn't know, like other than who I saw on TV, right? I had no idea who to go to. So eventually I found people who helped me to practice and understand that mediumship is just kind of a gateway and there's so much more that I can do. And then I could no longer deny what was going on. So now I can understand why I played that game and why I could see things and why I heard things and why, I always knew things. And,
you and I resonate on that level there because when I was younger, I could read energy and nice. we'd go shopping and I could feel the energy in a room and I would say to Mum, I can't go in there. And she'd be like, what's wrong with you? Come on. And right to this day, like I can read energy, but also, you know, I have had a lot of psychics and mediums on this show, and they said to me, "You're psychic," and I'm like, "God, stop it." But I've learned that I am, right? And the freaky part of it is, right, so my phone will go off at the other end of the house and I'll know who it is or what it is without even looking at it.
No, that's awesome.
And like you, I'm 95% of the time right. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Or I'll predict what's going to happen next, and people, like at work, they'll look at me and they're like, you and your crystal ball, you know? It's
maybe it's time for a career shift.
Oh, I tell you what, it's a nice thing to have in your back pocket, isn't it, though? Like that intuition, once you've developed that and you can trust in it with such strength, like people like look at you and go, how can you do that? It's like, but it takes practice, doesn't it?
Oh my God, yes. And they're telling me to tell you that it's the gift that keeps on giving too. So it all started with mediumship, then it turned into psychics, because all mediums are psychics, but not all psychics are mediums. After that, I did some Reiki work, and then I started doing energy healing. I didn't know I'd do that. And then I started talking to like pre-born babies. So I call them prenatal readings.
Wow.
Right. And then I started talking to animals, and that was like, what? Like how, living or dead? And I was just, so I'm kind of at this point, every couple of years, like there's just new beautiful gifts that keep coming. So, but yes, it takes a lot of practice. And I have never met a psychic who's 100% confident in their abilities.
Oh yeah.
You know, there's always doubt.
Yeah.
There's always like, I have a reading in a couple hours and I'm just like, you know, I always get a little nervous, like the couple minutes before, being like, okay, please come today. Like, let's do this, you know?
And I love talking to someone who's so connected with spirit that, you know, they're like, oh, they're telling me to tell you this. I love having those conversations. I'm like, what are they telling you now?
You know what? It's interesting when you said that, they literally were like, there's something in your life. I don't know if you're open to this, but like there's something that you're debating whether to like let it go or not. And I just keep hearing, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep going, just keep going. That's for you. Spot
on. Absolutely spot on. Nice. And yes, please throw whatever comes through at me. I'm open.
Awesome.
Now, mediumship. And when I learned that you could talk to animals, that really, like, I was like, oh, okay, we need to go down this path, because anyone that knows me, Seth, knows that I love dogs, right? I have a 12-year-old foxy chihuahua in the backyard right now, but my other puppy passed away in June last year, little Louie, who was a little purebred Japanese chin. I'm wondering whether he's coming through or if he's around.
Yeah, I mean, let's bring him forward. Let's talk to him. That's cool. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Like I'm asking him to kind of come closer to us. You said Japanese chin, right?
Chin. Yeah.
Okay. And is the number 4? Does that make sense to you? I don't know whether there's a relation to 4 or the month of April. No. How old was he when he passed?
He was 10.
Okay. And I don't know much about these dogs, but I get the feeling that if you're open, we can just, okay. So we'll talk about the end that's soon, but there's something about like him slowing down, which was like tough on you and tough on him. So there's something about being 4 years old. I don't know if that was like his prime, but it feels to me like he wants you to really remember him at the 4 years old. And I don't know if they have tails or not, but I do see like a is it a curly tail or a tail that
it's really like fluffy? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I feel like the wave, like totally, I don't know if he waved a lot, his tail, but the 4 years old, that's where he's bringing me back to draw you back. So when you think about him, it's not just about the end. Yeah. It's about the what is he saying? The crazy goodness of being 4 years old and running around like, and enjoying life. Yeah. I think that correct me if I'm wrong, but he makes me feel like he really kind of opened you up. Yeah. In a lot of ways. And he didn't really have to do anything to open you up. It just seemed like just by being who he was, it's like spiritually, emotionally for you, it helped you to relax more.
Yeah.
I get the sense that you're always kind of on the go, or you were kind of always on the go. So I feel like you coming home to him was like, yes, like this is home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And at that, I can remember at that 4 years old stage, he would always play with Lola, the other dog, who's significantly bigger, and would run behind her and grab her tail in his mouth. And that's probably one of the most memorable things. You know, he'd run along and he'd chase her and then grab a tail in his mouth. It was hilarious.
Maybe that's the tail I'm seeing then.
Maybe it is.
That's amazing.
It's fascinating.
I know the end was tough, and I'm sorry for that. Can we go there?
Yeah.
As well? Okay. So, and I could be wrong, but like he shows me there was something like physically wrong, but it was very quick though. Like it wasn't like it doesn't feel very prolonged.
No.
Okay. So, and it's almost as if like the moment it's kind of like he's showing me like an animated, like a Disney movie or an animated movie where like he's like taken away from you and he's like, no, but I'm not done yet. You know? So he wants you to know that like it was not his decision.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened, and he watches over you. I don't know if your dog now, you said Lola is the one that's still living. Like, I don't know if she still sees him, but I know he was around for a while in the house. I don't know if you felt him as well, but or you have moments. It feels to me like you have moments where you might feel him either cuddle next to you or somehow. I don't know if he used to nudge you. He's showing me like I'm nudging you in a certain way. I don't know if you still feel that sometimes, but he's definitely still very much around, or was at least for a long time, and he's excited for you and what the future holds, but also like when you pass, like you get to be together again, and or he might reincarnate and come back as one of your next dogs.
Yeah, wow! Imagine that. That would be incredible. To it reminds me of that movie, A Dog's Life.
Oh my god!
Can't watch it.
I know. You know what? When I need a good cry, I put on the last 10 minutes, and I just sob, and it's so good. It's just so good. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Now, we're talking about death here, and it's something that you're fascinated by, and you're a death doula. How did you become so fascinated with this and want to guide people to the other side?
I feel there's a lot of things that contributed. When I was growing up, by the time I was 8 or 9 years old, my entire Jewish mother's side had passed. They would never let me go to a funeral though, but they kept going to funerals, and I saw my mother suffer. And even to this day, my mother really can barely talk about death. And I was always like, no, I want to talk about it. It's like, it's a definite in this life, like everyone's going to die. And there's so much yumminess there. Instead of the word taboo, I try to use the word yumminess because it makes it more delicious. So that started the whole kind of process. And then it was like, I had so many friends of my own pass in my 20s. Within 2 years, I had 5 of my good friends, not just like acquaintances, good friends pass. And so that kind of started me on a journey of what is grief? How does it work? All that stuff. So that's when I got fascinated with like my patterns of grief. And then a lot of other things have happened to me as well that like traumas and stuff that have all kind of made it not clear to me, but very fascinated by how people move through anything, any type of loss. And then the last kind of straw, if you will, my mother-in-law passed a year and a half ago, and we watched the whole thing. The last 10 days, she was in South Africa. She lived there, but we were there for 3 months, and then we came back for a month, and we were there. And I was just fascinated by the whole death doula movement, and I had done research throughout the years, but it wasn't like I helped her and watched her go through this transition in the family that I was like, that's what I need to do. Like, that's another thing I want to do with my life, because, and not to mention being a medium, like speaking with so many grieving people and speaking with people on the other side, I know what it's like on the other side. So why not combine everything together and help people? Because I can, if you think about it, like I can help families before, during, and after. Right. Like, I think that's so when I applied for like death dueling schools, they were like, oh my God, of course. Like we love mediums because you can do the whole thing. And I'm sorry, I'm just so passionate about
No, I love it.
death and like, so strange. But I can talk about it all day long. But that's kind of how the evolution happened of becoming a death doula and how I can help people. I mean, I can't even tell you how many friends have called me throughout the years and been like, hey, so my mother's not doing so well, or my father's not doing so well, or my uncle is not doing so well. And I would be like, yeah, I have this weird gift that I can kind of see how long they have, especially towards the end, like within the day. So people would ask me, like, how much longer do you think they have? And I was like, are you sure you want to know? They're like, yes. And I was like, okay, so it could be tonight, it could be tomorrow, but or it'll be 6 days from now. And unfortunately, it's about 99% accuracy, but I help them to say everything you need to say, like enjoy they might not be there, but they're still there. Right? They may not be lucid, but they still can hear you. Because I can't tell you how many readings people are like, I know that you said X, Y, and Z to me and they're like, how do you know that? I'm like, because they could hear you. It's the hearing is one of the last things to go, apparently. So okay, I went on a tangent with that one, but there you go.
I love it. So, I've had so many different doulas on the show, and people have said to me, what is a doula and what do they do?
Essentially, I understand the nuances of what it takes to die in the United States, right? Like, I don't know if I could because I know the advanced directives, there's certain things that are specific to the United States, right? All the forms they need to fill out. So I understand like the emotional side of it, the spiritual side of it, and the logistical side of it. Like if you're in hospice in the United States, then they can die in the home. And then the whoever comes next can come and get the body. If you're not on hospice, then you have to report it to the police first, and then the police come. I mean, there's just like all these nuances. So a death doula, I think, helps with all of that. So like the emotional, the physical, right, as well, spiritual, and the actual death itself. And then as a bonus, right, like I can help them after.
And that's such an incredible service, I guess, like particularly when you're grieving, that's the last thing you want to, organize everything and deal with all that kind of stuff, because it compounds the grief and makes the whole process even harder, doesn't it? So it also takes you away from the person that you love. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got so many questions I want to ask you. I don't know where to start.
I'm here now.
Now, you also do intuitive business coaching as well. What does that look like?
So the soundbite that I love to tell people is I mostly help LGBTQ plus family members essentially take their life from good to great. I help them heal their inner strife, reframe their past, present, help them become more intuitive, because anyone working with me, I ask them, well, what are you feeling about it a lot, right? So because they always want to know what I'm feeling about it, but I'm like, no, what are you feeling about it? Because you have much more expertise in you than I do. And then I help them to build better legacies and futures and success for themselves and everyone around them, because the people I work with are usually executives and I like to say game changers. They're changing the game. I have a lot of people in entertainment because I'm in LA, but a lot of my clients from elsewhere are also in entertainment. So I essentially help them become more aware about everything in their life. I help them heal through things. And then I teach them or coach them or partner with them to learn the nuances of integration, of compassion, of kindness, of intuition, of leadership. So everything we talk about, actually, one of my next books that I'm going to write is like the principles of intuitive leadership. And that's what I feel like I'm helping these incredible souls do, is become better, more intuitive leaders. And there's an upcoming program that I have, but I also mostly right now I work one-on-one.
And, I think intuition is such a valuable gift in business and in leadership. I often say, well, I have another job outside of this. I work full time in government, and
oh wow,
yeah,
okay,
and so I make it very clear that I rely on my intuition a lot in my decision making as a leader. And people often come to me for help on making decisions because of that. And I've got a proven track record with it as well. It's like it's something that I've really finely tuned and I rely on so much. And people are like, yeah, but this is business. It's not this woo woo kind of stuff. I was like, well, actually, the two can kind of go together.
Yes, I believe I really want to work eventually. I want to do kind of a spiritual advisory to governmental figures, to prime ministers, to presidents around the world, because I believe, and I know that they all kind of have spiritual advisors of some sort, but I want to be the one they come to hone their own intuition and to learn more about intuition, how they can follow their own, but also get some guidance from a completely objective, compassionate, kind partner. So I believe we all need to do that no matter where we work, especially though government.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. And, I know I'm banging on about intuition here, but I know I think it was about 5 years ago when I started seeing a sound healer. I remember my first session, I walked in and like, when you go to one of these sessions and you walk in and you're like, you don't know what to expect and you're like, I don't even know what I'm here for, but I know I've got a lot of shit to heal. Anyway, I walked in and she just turned around and said everything that I didn't know how to say. And I was just like, how did you know that? She had the intuition. And I was just like, oh, this is what it is.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just incredible, like how she had that gift of pulling out the things you couldn't find the words to say. And I was just like, yeah, so that's what it is.
I really would love for everyone to learn how to be more intuitive and psychic, and I believe that we all are. It's our natural way of being. We just have, just like everything else, it's been beaten out of us essentially, and we've lost touch with how to connect with ourselves and or a higher power. Sorry, they were just about to say something else to me. So, and intuition is just, it's so important for the survival of humanity is what I'm getting.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you help people heal a lot of trauma, and no doubt in LA you would be a busy person, can I just say?
Yes.
But like right now in 2023, people are going through a lot, right? Like we're post-pandemic. People are like trying to find this new normal, whatever it is. A lot of people are angry. I don't know if you're finding that people are angry, or they don't want to be present. They don't want to connect with themselves. They don't want to feel the feels. These are the things that you're being presented with to, people are bringing to you.
Absolutely. I was very hopeful in the middle of the pandemic that people were kind of taking time to look at themselves. I feel like it was a very introspective time. And now I feel very much the same you do afterwards. No one knows how to deal with that. It was a trauma. Like none of us had experienced something like that in our lifetime, right? Like former generations, yes, but we haven't had to deal with something like that, especially given the world as it is now. So even though we all experience this universal trauma, we each have our own individual, unique experience within that. I help I help a lot of people. I even wrote a children's book about the pandemic and how to like move through it, children's book in quotes, right? Because it's really for anyone.
Yeah.
But I think it's a lot easier to digest as a children's book. But yeah, and I think if people took the time to kind of check in with themselves, they would understand like, yeah, I'm still angry, or wow, that was hell for me, or any of the above feelings. But I do believe that it's so important to feel the feels. I think that there's no other way to get through and move through the grief and the heartache and the pain unless you feel the feels.
Yeah, I know there's a saying that goes around that, we're made of 90% water and we've got emotions. We're just complicated houseplants, So we've really got to feel those feels. We are unique beings, and we're human, and we've got to embrace that humanness that we are. Now, I talk about trauma a lot in several of the shows that I do, and people are probably like, oh, you just go on about this all the time. Why? But the reason is that, if we don't do something about it, it's going to have an impact on our life and our outcomes in life. And people are like, oh, yeah, but everybody's got trauma. Just get over it. But it's not that simple, is it?
No, not at all. I've started telling people that there are 3 definites in life. It's death, taxes, and grief or trauma. We cannot get around it, and we can no longer, like you said, we can't avoid it. Because avoiding our grief, like you said, it impacts not just us, but everyone in our world, and then everyone in their world, and then everyone in their world. So that's why I want to create this ripple effect of healing, like a movement, right? So it goes outward as opposed to coming back in. But that's why that's what I love to talk about, right? That's why I created the methods that I did, because I wanted to give people tools to handle and move through their trauma as opposed to sit with it or not sit with it.
And, they say healed humans heal humans, right? So whatever presents in us, it then ripples out, like you're saying. But tell us about the methods that you've developed. So you've got Smile and Grace.
Yes. So the SMILE method is an acronym, SMILE. It's to help people moving through grief now, or moving through trauma now in the current crazy modern world. The GRACE method is about healing a past situation once for all. So the SMILE method S is for shock. I don't think I need to explain what shock is to most people. M is a made-up word, acceptance. So it's part denial, part acceptance. It's the time when we were talking about earlier, when someone passes away and you have to literally plan the funeral and a memorial service or the celebration of life. And somehow you get through it. You have no idea how. And then literally the next day, you don't want to get out of bed. Or one day you do, one day you don't. So it's that, no, that's the acceptance part of it all. Then I feel like we go through the feeling of the feels, right? I call it in overwhelmdom. These are poignant and significant emotions that we must go through. At the other side of that, and by the way, this is not linear. No, this is not linear.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is, right? But maybe the first time it might be, but then the second, third time when you get triggered, you got to work through it again. So then there's L is for learning. This is the profound insight we gain. Learning can be anything from, if you break up with someone, it can be, wow, like this is what I've learned about myself. This is what I've learned about them. Now I know what I don't want. Now I know what I do want, right? And then moving past that, it's embrace. Because I believe that acceptance is just no longer enough in the 21st century. We need to be blessed and honored. And even if it's death, and, to pay it forward, right? Depending on how, like losing a child, I believe is the one of the hardest with animals as well. And moving through that to pay it forward to other people so that they don't necessarily have to suffer the way you did, or helping other people that are in similar situations. That's what I mean by embracing. So that's kind of like the SMILE method. And we get triggered all the time. And then we might feel the feels again, and then we might learn more, right? And then we'll get to the embrace again. Or we go all the way back and we're like, something's very much triggering us. we take a couple deep breaths, and then we go back to acceptance, and then an overwhelm. So it is not linear. So that's the SMILE method.
Mm-hmm.
The GRACE method is really fascinating, and it's newer to me because I've been talking about the SMILE method for 10 years. The GRACE method has only been around for 2 years. So the GRACE method is same thing in terms of a acronym. The first one is going deep. And I feel like to go deep, we need to tell the version of our story in 3 different ways. As we all know, there's 3 different truths, right, to every story. So it's our version, the other person's version, and then somewhat of the truth, right? So I believe to go deep, you need to really embellish, exaggerate, and share your story. Then I feel like you need to choose someone who loves and supports you and won't judge, and just has so much compassion and love for you, that they listen to you telling the story from the other person or other side of the story. And it's so important to do that because even when I was writing the book, I understood even more about the other person's side than I did my own. And I was like, oh my God. So as we go from the G to the R, which is responsibility and accountability, when we start telling the version, when we see the version, our version versus their version, and then we see the truth, then we start to believe and understand the accountability. And whatever happened, some people might have 100% of the accountability, or might have 50%, or might have 10% or 5%, depending on what has happened to you. So there's that. It's so important to acknowledge that accountability and responsibility. Then we go into the field and feels again. I call it activating your emotions. So because this is healing the past, I believe that people either have avoided their feelings their entire lives, or haven't dealt with it productively and effectively. And that's what both of these SMILE method and GRACE method are, is to help people move through both, whatever has happened, productively and effectively. So again, you got to feel the feels. But this time, you're feeling it in a productive and an intentional way. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So then we have the C, compassion, right? And when I say compassion, I mean forgiveness for everyone. I mean forgiveness for the other side, for you. It's always harder. It's very hard for us sometimes to forgive ourselves. And that's what I discovered in writing this book, that I had never forgiven myself for all this that had happened. So compassion, and then finally the E is for evolve, because once you get through all these things, it's the same thing. It's very similar to embrace. It's the, wow, this happened to me. I'm so glad that it didn't happen this way, or it could have been so much worse. And the evolution is seen, I think, more as the time goes on and you've done this grace work. Yeah.
Incredible. And again,
questions?
Another million spin-offs there for me. But, one thing that came up for me there as you were talking, through all of the grief and the trauma, I think 2 things that I try to see, or that I try to help others see, is gratitude and also growth. Because we've got to recognize that, say, a loved one passes, a pet passes. It's like we have to be grateful that we had them for the time that we did, and the impact they had on us. And then there's also, people like, oh, my heart's broken. It's like, no, it's just, it's changed. And they're with you in your heart now. So it's really changing that mindset around death, and how we move forward.
Mm-hmm. And I'm really big on alliteration. So like turning pain into progress, heartache into hope, right? And the grief into growth, and trauma into triumph. Like that's, I think, where we all need to believe that it's possible. Because I feel like a lot of people don't believe that's possible to heal, right, from what's been going on. And I think healing is a work in progress for the rest of our lives on some situations. But I totally agree. I totally agree that we experience to evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Absolutely. And that's what being a human and living is, isn't it? And it's an evolution every single minute. We change, life changes, things move on. The planet keeps spinning.
I can't take control. I can't take credit for that, by the way. It was
Oh, that one's not yours?
it's not mine. Not mine. I'll take credit where credit's due, but that's not mine.
Oh, Seth, you're the first one to move me to tears for a while, I can tell you that. Now, you are a busy man. You're an author as well. Tell us about the books.
Yeah, so the Smile method is in Smile from the Inside. The Grace method is From Grief to Grace. The children's book, the first children's book, it's Finn in the Ferocious Flu. So I'm a self-help author and a children's book author. My next children's book is coming out on March 17th of this year. So that's exciting. It's called Scout and the Serious Split. It's actually I like to say, instead of taboo, I like to say yummy, right?
Yeah.
So it talks about yummy topics, and they all have some type of LGBTQ plus sparkle in them. So this one is about a divorce.
Oh, wow.
Between two women and how the family navigates through that divorce and separation. And every book is going to tackle some type of yummy subject. The next one is going to be, we're deciding whether it's going to be a transgender transition or the death of an animal, actually.
And nobody talks about that stuff. You know, like you're talking about taboo or yummy. Nobody talks about that stuff. And don't even get me started on all the laws in the States at the moment. But nobody talks about this stuff, particularly with kids, right? You know, and then they get to teenage years and then they're questioning themselves and who they are, what their identity is, what their expression is, and they got nothing to turn to.
No.
So thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I just got goosebumps everywhere, but that is the aim and the intention is to write these books. And by the way, and I love my sister, even my sister I wanted her kids who are 8 and 11 to 8 and 12 to read the book and give me their feelings about it. But she was like very protective. She is very protective. And she's like, maybe they can read it later in life, not right now, you know? And I was like, and I respect that. And then I spoke to my mother and my mother's like, oh, she's just being too protective. We need to talk about these things.
Oh, that's amazing.
You know? I know, because I thought my mother was going to be like, oh, of course, like I get it. But my mother was like, no, you push forward. You put that book out. That's important. It's an important book, you know?
And that's it. Like, we think we've come so far, don't we? And then you reach out to people you think will embrace what you're putting out. And it's like, oh, okay, we got a little way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's, you know, my next couple of books, as I mentioned, one is going to be about intuitive leadership. So essentially what I do with my intuitive game changers. And then also I'm going to write a book about essentially like, thank you for being a friend, like something to to support other people going through trauma and going through grief of any type. Because I feel like we don't know what to say, so we say the wrong things sometimes, you know, or the worst thing, we say the worst thing possible. Oh, you're like, if someone passes, oh, you'll find someone soon. No, that is not what I want to hear. Or, oh, just get another dog. No, that is not what I want to hear either. You know? So I want to give people, again, the tools, right? I'll have to create another fun little method for them to support people, because I think that all we lack, well, we lack many things, but I feel like tools to grieve. You know?
Yeah. And Seth, I'm just thinking there's so many people in LA I want to introduce you to because yeah, there's a friend of mine not far down the road from you who she wrote a book, 100 Acts of Love, because she lost her husband to cancer. And she wanted to teach people ways to help people through grief. And it was those acts of love where they show up and they just go and do something. They don't, you know, sit there and wallow with you. They actually help you through what you got to do in life.
I love that.
So,
I love that.
Yeah, it's just looking at grief in a different way, and also looking at grief in the workplace. You know, like if, say, a co-worker dies or they take their life, heaven forbid, how you deal with that as a leader.
Yeah.
You
know, that happened in one of the companies that I consulted for recently, and they turned to me because they're like, you are a grief expert. What do we do? And so I gave them kind of what my whole thing, and, you know, they thought like after 2 like bereavement sessions that everyone would be like, oh, that's enough. No, I was like, no, I think you should do it for at least 6 months. And then I think you should have a monthly bereavement group for anyone, talking about animals or people. I think it's such a beautiful way to honor the person that passed, and to then, because we all lose people all the time. So how cool is that? And now they're doing that. So it's you're right. It's very important in corporate or government or wherever we are working.
And that's it. We're so keen to just push it aside or bury it down or try and forget it or walk away from it and pretend it never happened. But it's always going to bubble up. It always will.
Absolutely.
So we got to deal with it. Now, Seth, if people want to get in touch with you and find all your yumminess, where can they go?
They can go to iamsetheliot.com, 1L1T. And they can find anything they want there. On Instagram and TikTok, it's at Seth Eliot Santoro. And then it's usually Seth E or Seth Eliot Santoro on all of my social media or my LinkedIn's. And there's lots of, I also help people write bestsellers.
Of course you do. You just do it all, don't you?
So it's a new thing that I started last year, and I already have 6 people becoming an international bestseller. So it's cool. There's a lot of amazing stuff going on. Well,
we better talk because I've actually started writing my book. So
yes, we do have to talk.
I think we've found a kindred soul here.
I could tell from the very first second I got on the phone with you.
Yeah. Now, I've got the last big question for you, Seth.
Yes.
What's the change you'd like to see in the world, and how can we bring it to life?
I believe that we all need to understand that there are 3 definites in this world, right? In this lifetime, and that grief and trauma and loss is one of those. And I feel like we need to stop being afraid of it, and not only deal with it ourselves, but help others with their grief and their trauma. I truly believe that if we heal ourselves first and get to that point, that we can then inspire others to do the same. And that's a ripple effect that I want to create.
Yeah, and that's the whole ethos of this show. It all begins with us. The change begins with us.
Yes.
Look at
absolutely.
that. You got the memo before you even sat down. One thing that's been going around in my head as you've been thinking of answers, and this could probably be my connection to the spirit, is I'm wondering if they're giving you all the answers.
Some of them. I tend to believe that when they are I was on a podcast the other day and they're like, you are messing this up. They're like, let's start again. So they're like, because they can edit this, right? So they literally said, say it again like this. And they give me, I think they let me kind of go on my own until I mess up. And then they're like, no. We need these people to hear X, Y, and Z, So, I think they trust me most of the time.
Do you find that comes through with your writing the books as well? Like it's actually guided from spirit?
Yeah. Can I be very honest? When I was writing the Grace Method, I would let them, I felt like, give me this next paragraph. I feel like we all tap into that when we're writing, and we're writing what we love. So I do feel like there's aspects of that, but yes. And I feel like the next couple of books are going to be fascinating to write, because I think it's going to be co-authorship, right? With these spirits and myself, or the universe or God or whomever you believe in, whatever you believe in. I think fair question. Good question.
I love that. And, I often say to people that I'm just here to be a vehicle for this, because a lot of what I bring to this show, the mission of the agency, everything, it was all divinely guided. I was just I just get thrown the names of things, and it's like it just becomes a brand then. I'm just like, okay, it's just and I don't know about you, whether it's a visual thing for you or you just get words or you get sound or whatever it is, but I just get these messages and it just tends to be words, and very rarely is it a visual that I can embrace.
Oh, wow. Okay. I think there's so many different clairs, like clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, clairtangency, clairgustance, like all those things. So we can receive information in so many different ways. I want people to acknowledge that the way that they receive information and dive in, just like you have dove in. You have dove in. You have.
Like I've done.
Yes, like you've done. Thanks.
But I also found that a lot of the messages came through in particular locations for me. I don't know whether that happens for you, but when they first started coming through, it was by a cemetery.
No way.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I'd drive by this cemetery and I'd be getting all this stuff and I'd be like, it's always at the same place. And then I realized there was a cemetery right beside me, hundreds of years old. And I'm just like, oh, okay.
No, I get it.
And I think that's the whole key to intuition is listening to yourself, like quieting all the other crap out and just listening to that message and acknowledging it.
Yes, and it is so subtle at times. It is so subtle because I'll miss it. I mean, my husband is also a medium, which is how we met. And he, they talk so loud to him, it's like screaming to him. But to me, they whisper. I'm like, can you turn the volume up just a little bit? And for you, it's like in quiet spots by cemeteries, right? But I'm sure it's a very faint, subtle, I think I'm getting something, so it changes from person to person. But
and how must your relationship be? I mean,
oh, it's crazy. It's crazy good. It's crazy because he makes the same noise when he sees a little spider to when he sees someone in the house. Like he actually physically sees them.
Oh, really?
And he'll see people that I'm going to read that night. He'll see, and I'm like, yes, they're in the house. I know, I feel them. I've allowed them because I allowed them to kind of come with me for the day. And he's like, you have a guy with you, right, that committed suicide? I'm like, yes, that's who I'm reading tonight. So it's fascinating.
Oh my gosh, you two need to go on the road together. Wow. That's a whole other podcast. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
We could do that. We have a married mediums reading that we do together, which is fascinating. Yeah. But yeah, we can do that in the future if you want. We can do a whole reading for you if you want.
I would love that. I would absolutely love that. Let's book it in. Seth, My gosh, you have just been absolutely incredible. I could just sit with you all day, really.
I know, I love it.
Thank you so much for being a part of the Ethical Evolution.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here.
Thanks for listening to the Ethical Evolution podcast. If you're ready to be the change and would love to work with me on finding your voice through spiritual coaching or creating your own podcast with impact, visit ethicalchangeagency.com.
Introducing the Deep Leadership Podcast. Leadership is a people business. That's the philosophy of your podcast host, John Rennie. As a former submarine officer who spent 22 years leading businesses in corporate America before starting his own manufacturing business, he knows that leadership matters. Deep Leadership is real-world, actionable leadership advice from John and his expert guests. Become a leader worth following. Subscribe today.
Electricast.
Hello, fellow lushes. The tavern is now open.
So grab a cocktail and join Dimples in the Beard for riveting conversations with
Gorgeous playmates,
sexy OnlyFans,
hilarious comedians,
talented actors,
brilliant directors,
gifted musicians,
and so much more.
Watch on YouTube and listen on any of your favorite podcast platforms.
And subscribe to Cocktails with Dimples in the Beard, presented by Society 13 and the Electricast Network.
See you at the tavern.